So sometimes it's difficult to thrive in the face of adversity when it seems like the barriers outweigh our ability to adapt and maneuver certain obstacles, especially when it seems overwhelmingly impossible. While difficult, it's not impossible to stay focused, faithful, and fruitful in spite of the obstacles. We learned about that earlier. So my first question is, how can family and communities create safe spaces for individuals to shift their mindset and view failure as a stepping stone rather than a stopping point? So, also, we got to keep it down to a minute. So, sit and think about it.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How can families and communities create safe spaces for individuals to shift their mindset and value failure as a stepping stone rather than a stopping point? Mm-hmm. What cultural or societal barriers may prevent this?
I'll be the first. I would say that the first thing is when we have to be inviting. So we have to be people also to be like we would tell people all the time, are you a person who people are able to come and talk to or be around? That's the first thing. So creating a space in you too for people to come to. But once they come, is being a listener first. Able to listen versus saying anything. Like they say on Planet Fitness, the non-judge zone, the non-judge zone. I mean, it's being able to, even when it burns and you want to say something, but being in a place of letting them know that they can trust you.
Anybody else?
I would say meet people where they're at. Stop judging people. Stop, just what your opinion is of what they're doing. If it's sin, they don't need to hear that right now. They already know they're in a situation, and failure is nothing more than feedback, because failure is part of success. It's actually a prerequisite for success. You cannot have success do you not have failure. Like, you don't know you have a success until you've had so many failed attempts. So it is part of success. So it's not the outlier in the realm of things. It's actually the requirement to get there. So, and a lot of times people try to make meaning of things. Like, so if you failed at a task, once you make meaning and you address it to yourself, it's a difference in saying I failed at a task versus I'm a failure. If you say I'm a failure, you've now attached it to yourself. You've now made meaning that I'm the failure. You're not the failure. You failed at a task. That's simply it. And it's what do you make meaning of? But meet people where they're at. And the last thing they need to hear is what they're doing wrong, because they already know.
That's good.
Anybody else?
I got one. I kind of think we're talking about positive reinforcement also. Not necessarily worried about the outcomes, if they're successful or not, but just that they gave the effort. And kind of like you said, failing is kind of part of the process, and you have to learn from that. So modeling that as the parents, village, whoever, is around that person, they all gonna need, some positive reinforcement, is what I'm saying.
I'll say it real quick. You always hear people say, you have to share your testimony, you have to share your story. And that's one way that people learn from you and learn from life, is by hearing what you've gone through. And like people have always said when we're younger, you might be the only Bible somebody sees. Well, you might be the only testimony someone sees. So by being that voice and sometimes saying, I have been there, and being relatable, as well as listening without interjecting, it's a fine line, but it's definitely something that's powerful and that has helped me along my journey.
With me being a teacher, I deal with kids all day, and the first thing they hate to do is to fail a test or anything like that. So I don't give them a 0. I will say, I'll put a smiley face on there. Good job. Let's work on this the next time, or something like that. I put a positive affirmation in there so they know to look forward to next time. And then I also ask them open-ended questions about what can you do, or what do you think you did that made you get this answer wrong, or what did you think you did to make you do this? And then I help them walk themselves through it to fix that problem. So that would be a great way to build self-confidence for them. I help them build their own self-confidence by asking them open-ended questions and making them think about what they've done.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that
All of those approaches are made, but also going into situations with an open mind and not thinking that the way that you perceive something or know something and how you learned it is the only way that it exists. You have to be able to be open enough to receive varying cultures, varying, when we think cultures, we think across the world. No, a culture is a neighborhood to neighborhood, or a school to school, or an environment to an environment. We have to be able to receive, like you said, meet them where they are, but that might be in a situation. You just might you might need to just go in there ready to unlearn everything that you think that you know about a situation.
That's good. That's good.
I like everything I've heard. I think you have to. But then I think it also then when you get at the end of this, it's like, okay, so what's the strategy for sustainability? 'Cause I'm pretty sure this was a similar question about 10 years ago, and maybe 10 years before that. But then how do we begin to create something that's functional? Because we have this common theme, but I think with the tools that we have, like how do we create sustainable network, rather, that's in connection, that actually, is staying 10 steps ahead of how culture is operating right now, in terms of connectivity and how quick things are moving with youth and folks who are dealing with something. At some point in time, it has to be something that's tangible, something that's operational, that's actually, a code amongst us. That says this is what we know, but how does it begin to show itself actually within our culture and what we're doing? Because I'm affiliated with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, folks, ladies, can you, anybody can mentor, can you mentor? And I just keep it 100. I'm just like, you know what? I am in this constant process of myself, of how I'm showing up for me, how I'm showing up at home first. And that whole concept of pouring from an empty cup, and as much as I want to, because my heart is like, I have the energy. And so it's just, I don't want to get too far off the tangent but ultimately just coming back to, what can we have amongst us that's not divisive, and we can all.
I will add a great book for us high and overachievers, because I'm sure we have some in the room, is Chasing Failure. And it just it's a big mind shift. It's by Ryan Leakes. But it's a mind shift of how you really view failure, because a lot of us were raised that failure was bad. And failure is probably one of the best things that can ever happen to us. So that's my little spiel. But Chasing Failure is a great book to shift that mindset. So my next question is, what strategies can families implement to help members combat negative self-talk and self-doubt? How can communities foster an environment of support instead of comparison?
Ooh, that's good.
I would say I have an older daughter, I have a younger sister, sisters that are under me, brothers that are under me. I think I lead by coming outside of our comfort zone. I think we focus, we love our kids and we love our family, that we always want them around us. But community doesn't have to be family. Sometimes community is this.
That's right.
Sometimes you're going to find your tribe in another state, in another country. So you have to be willing to spread yourself and get uncomfortable. I didn't model before I was 20. I never would have thought I would be modeling and doing movies in front of Men's Warehouse. But it all comes from stretching myself and leaving what's comfortable. I think sometimes we forget that it's okay to tell your child, look, I want you to go overseas for school. I told my daughter, I don't want you in the States. I want you to be over there. Because over there, you're gonna learn who you are, and you're also gonna be able to learn who they are. That's gonna stretch your learning, it's gonna stretch your capability. You're gonna see what you could do, and you won't be scared. I think some of it is we want people close to us because we're afraid to lose them, but you will lose them if you keep them too close to you. So the more you stretch, the more you prove that you're worthy. It comes from the uncomfortableness. It comes from the, I'm not sure if I can. But if you really think about it, who's stopping you other than you? Right. You end up being a great mentor for the ones that are watching. I never would have thought that I would have so many eyes. But when they look at me, I hope they see what they can do versus what they're doing.
I had a conversation with a friend the other day, a very close friend, and she's very traditional, kind of by the book. And we were having a conversation just about her kids or something, and she brought up that narrative about, yeah, well, my grandparents, and they walked, you know, they walked to school in the snow, 10 miles in the snow. And I remember my therapist this past year, you know, I went into therapy and I was like, I done overcame this, and I went through this, and me and God went through this. And she was like, oh, that's great, but when you gonna stop telling that story? Mm-hmm. And it landed me flat on my face, and I thought about that in the conversation with her. When we gonna stop telling that narrative? Yeah. So we use those old narratives, and history is good, and history brings about an empowerment, but we use those stories to hold hostage, because our kids don't know nothing about walking in this. So you can't make them realize something that's not going to be their story. So this is what I told her. I said, you remember we used to watch Jetsons, right? And she was like, yeah. And I said, you remember on the Jetsons, they were looking at each other on the TV and they were talking on the TV. I said, you do that every day. And she was like, oh my God, that's the limits. Like we take history, and it's important. She didn't know that a woman just in 1972, it was only in 1972 that women were legally able to open a bank account and take out a mortgage. That's in my lifetime. And so we have to be able to change the narrative. And I like what you said, like when we take all these ideas and come together, how do we make, you know, that's the resolve. But we also need to start telling a different story.
I actually have a technique that I use, God gave to me, that I use with all my clients with negative thoughts, is I'll ask them 3 questions. Whenever you have those automatic negative thoughts, first question is it true? And it may or it may not be true. Second, does it belong to you? Or is it something that somebody put on you? And then the third one is, are you willing to let it stop taking up space in your heart and in your head? Because that's where you have the choice. You may not have the choice of what somebody said. You may not have the choice of if it's true. But you do have the choice of, are you ready now to not let this be the center? Like, you've got that choice to let it, and it goes right along with what you're saying about, you know, giving up your story. Because another thing I'll ask people, because even Jesus asked, do you want to be well? Yeah. You gotta want to be well. Yeah. And then, are you willing to give up your story? Because people get their identities from these stories. For a long time, I was that single mother struggling. That was my story, because what I got, because everything has a reward. And what I got from it, what I needed was, oh, you're so strong. You're so this. So I became part of that story, because that's what I needed to fuel myself. In comparison, I'm the epitome of comparison, because in my family, it may not look like it right in this room, but I'm the darkest one in my family. I'm Italian, and my sister and me, we have different dads and stuff like that, but I stick out like a sore thumb. She's tall, legs, yoga pant wearing, like her legs are up to here to me. But I compared myself my whole life, because I'm like, I have big thighs, I have a big behind, I have big lips, I have thicker hair, my skin is darker. And I knew I was Italian, but then when I started looking, I found out I'm Sicilian Italian. And I started looking into my history. The Moors conquered Sicily. That's a black army. And like all these different places. So I don't look like, and I will never look like, I will never be a size 5, and I don't want my thigh as a size 5. It's like, I will never, but that was a huge thing, comparing myself, like, why don't I fit in? Because you're not meant to fit in.
That's right. That's it.
I think that comes with being chosen. I think when God chooses you, you never fit in.
Yeah.
I told my daughter that. You don't fit in because you're not supposed to. And sometimes we reach 40 years old and we figure out, that's why I never fit in.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's great to do that self-identity. Right now, America has an identity crisis.
Exactly.
We don't know who we are, where we are, where we're going, who we with, who we run with, who's the group, who's not the group. So self-soothing helps that, because sometimes you are your community.
The word of God says we are set apart. We are not supposed to be
Right.
anything.
We're set apart. We're
Go to the-
peculiar people.
All right, so because of time, I'm just gonna have 3 people answer moving forward, okay?
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry, it's okay. How can families and communities work together to build systems that prioritize long-term wellness goals over instant gratification? What role does accountability play in maintaining distance?
That would be, one thing that I can see that with that happening is would be family time. Sitting down, when my grandmother and grandparents were here, we sat down at the table together. We spent quality time together. We ate together. We laughed together. We watched TV together. I remember watching the Merv Griffin show. Yes, I'm old. But they watched that, but we did not lose that quality time. We did not lose that family time, and we also ate wholesome meals. Grandparents knew what to put on the table. My grandma didn't cook a lot of fatty foods, but she did cook soul food, if that makes sense. So that's a great way.
I think, and it's interesting, man, because I guess I'm not even on this panel just to, got it all together. I don't think nobody does. But that's something me and my wife actually, we came to the conclusion. It's like, man, we got to have systems. Like, because of the fact that, like I said, like the kids, they do not have, it's not going to be the way it was.
Right.
I tried to talk to my son. I said, you mean tell me you can't walk down that cul-de-sac to the bus stop by yourself? And I had to walk past this liquor store and get behind this gas station. But I couldn't even see the house.
We used to walk 4 blocks.
You know, and I tried to shame them. You know what I'm saying? Like, what?
Yeah.
But it's like, but that system onto me, you know what I'm saying? 'Cause my great grandmother was born 1916, so I couldn't even compare.
Right.
You know, I said, what y'all eat and how'd you survive in the Great Depression? And she just that was a white people thing. We already was making do.
Right.
You know, and so I've introduced that concept even into my home, like make do. You know, to where so that it's a certain entitlement. Because it is so easy to go in the room.
Yeah.
You know, get up the face. Here you go. You know what I'm saying? And it's so easy. It's like you go in your room and I'm on mine too. So it's just like, okay, now what's 10 steps ahead of what the heck is actually happening to us? And again, it looks good. You know what I'm saying? We work, wife's working, got a house, this, that, and other. But I'm just like, everybody's on their phone. And everybody's detached and man, just want to get back to that. And even get into a solid church home. I'm not trying to be held hostage for $40,000. I ain't saying
Let me tell you something.
No. Let's do that during the mix and mingle part.
I'm not touching that at all.
Okay.
But in all honesty, there's that conversation of church hurt, but then there has to be that conversation of church rebuild, rejoice.
Restoration.
You know, in the restoration, because I'm not able to give my kids what we had Jack Jones Tabernacle. You know what I'm saying? And you just can't go back to the past. To that. So it's a hard reevaluation for one.
But you can pull
and I
from
think how we ideate and really come up with some new concepts, and it'll catch.
Yeah.
I really believe that it'll catch when people see like, this is what you want for your child, ma'am. You're gonna have to change the system.
So this is it. What y'all said was so perfect. The main thing, and everybody's saying the same thing, is it's communication. That's what's missing. No, look at the families. Let's just look. I don't care who you are. I'm a pastor, and I got family. I got all stuff. I'm flying everywhere and going everywhere. But the one thing that's missing is communication. It's us community. It comes from communication. Community is coming together. We was talking in there about men building a community. We don't have that. No more. Because of this.
Right.
And it ain't because of this. This is because of us
Right.
doing this.
This,
But we
yeah.
pacifying.
Yeah.
And so if we just, and you said bringing it back, and the same thing even in the body of Christ. It is, and the second thing is learning how to forgive.
Yeah.
In the community.
Yeah.
Because we've come together, but we've had fault. And now we don't want to be around each other. So it's learning to forgive, but communicating, like coming together and really like having a time of communication. And I ain't talking about arguing. I ain't talking about coming together and gossiping. I'm talking about communication. I'm talking about coming together and just talking. Talking on life. How many times now when you come to the house or somebody comes in, they say, how's your day? How's everything going? Did you do this? Or how's going with this? Without me questioning what you did, just me caring about what happened today. Yeah, just that. That's what a building is. Yeah, sorry.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Let's move to. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. This is the panel. So we have an interactive part after the panel, but we got to get through the panel questions first.
We're almost done, guys. We're almost done. All right. So number 5, how can families and communities encourage adaptability and entrepreneurship by normalizing small risk and experimentation? What societal pressures contribute to a fear of change? I get 3 out of this.
I think stay off of Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and because that adds an unsurmounted amount of pressure to perform. And being authentic is not a performance, right? You know, when you're acting, when you're modeling, it's not a performance. That's who I am. So I don't need to be someone else to be that character. I can just put me in that character, and it's going to relate. So the problem with social media sometimes is that it's unrelatable because it's not real. It's got unrealistic social pressures. So to create that, we have to go back to the original purpose of Reup. It's to regroup, reevaluate, recommunicate, unlearn bad habits, create new systems, learn how to talk, learn how to forgive, and learn how to say, maybe I'm done here. Maybe I need to go here. And that community that you built over there that got you through that season will support you through the new season. Yeah. That's not on TikTok. That's not on Instagram. Right. That's not on Facebook. That's in these rooms. Yeah. So having these discussions and having different people from different parts of life, different age groups, share their experiences will create the pressure that makes diamonds versus the pressure that creates depression.
Good.
Exposure, I think, is great. Because how do you know what you can do unless you've been exposed to it? You know, and everybody has their specialty groups and stuff like that, and don't realize it's excluding rather than including. It's being inclusive. My family is a multiracial family. My children are multiracial, multicultural. And when I got divorced, I was in a project. I was struggling to pay $27 a month rent. And my kids said one time, and I just shared this with Lady J, we're in the project, and they're like, oh, Mom, you know, these new houses are coming on the other side of the project. Why don't you apply for one of those? I'm like, no, you're still in the project. I need you to see yourself outside of the project. So I would take them on Sundays to open houses that were $1 million homes. And we would go because I need you to not just see it, I need you to be in it and to experience. And one of the greatest turning points of my life is an old boyfriend's mother, because I live right below New York City, took me to go see a Broadway show, Chorus Line. Changed my life. And I did not know until that moment performing arts would be a key thing for me. But had I not been there, I wouldn't have experienced it. Like with the kids that I work with and, you know, the communities and stuff like that, I will take them. And I remember getting into argument. I actually lost a job because of this. My community is multicultural. And I had brought up, I said, I want to take the kids to go see a play, you know, and they're like, no, that's a white play. I'm like, no, it's not, you know, and they're like, well, our kids wouldn't appreciate that. Like, how do you know if you don't take them? Right. You know, so it's like you can't seclude yourself. You don't know what you can be until you see it. Yeah. And we have the greatest talents and stuff, but unless you expose them to it, give them the choice then, because they may have gifts and talents that are ignited like they were in me, that if you don't, because you can't limit them and say, oh no, that's not for you, that's for this group, that's for this group. No, it's not. That's for everybody.
Amen.
It's for expose them and allow them. Don't shame them. If they don't want to play basketball, maybe they want to be chess. Okay, cool. You're gonna be the best chess player there is. What are their interests?
Yeah.
And allow them to be themselves.
Wait a minute, Vicky had her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I am going to go back to the word. So, you know, just keep it plain. Who told you you were naked? And so we accept a lot of diagnoses. We accept a lot of the things that we hear. I'm not going to downplay social media because I use social media. I mean, my husband would like to say I'm addicted, but I'm using it to market my business. I don't know, you know. I find the good in social media. So I guess it just depends on
how you use it.
how you use it. So I think it's part of our culture now. So I don't downplay that. But listen, diagnosis is real, right? You guys do that for a living. You do that for a living. Anxiety is real, but it's not our prison. Depression is real. It's not our prison. Poverty is real, but it's not your limitation, right? Who told you you were this? God said, who told you? So you don't have to be held to a circumstance forever.
Right.
Seeing ourselves outside of this box that we have put ourselves in. We are in the cutoff culture. So, she knows my whole life. Right now, you know, I have an elderly mom for the same reasons that we talked about. I've had to say no until it became so narcissistic that I had to remove myself. I am the sacrificial lamb in my family right now. Everybody mad at me. But I'm still doing what God told me to do. Because I had to sit with myself and say, who told me that I was a bad mother? Who told me that I was a horrible daughter? Who said that? God didn't say that, right? So I am not limited to what my own thoughts are or to what people say about me. And if I can't do anything to make them see me differently, then go with that narrative. Go with that narrative. So we have this whole world around us that tells us that we are this and we're that, cut off this person and cut off that and turn your back on that and do this and go here or be loyal to family. That's not your assignment. We are not obligated to those things. We got to go with what God says about us. What does God say? He says, I am the head and not the tail, right? I'm above, I'm not beneath, right? He says that I'm more than a conqueror, right? It's all those parts. And I have to go back to faith. You are an entrepreneur if you believe and say that you're an entrepreneur, right? And we're not pigeonholed to work to make some conglomerate rich for the rest of our lives to be called faithful or successful. The check boxes. You went to college, you went to school, you did this, you finished this, and there's these check boxes, but what do they mean? And some of them have no character whatsoever. You know, I'm going to the left, but you know, I don't know what.
You answered it. You're good. So because of time, I'm gonna ask the next question. But I will say one thing. I think it's important when you become an entrepreneur, or just in life, sit down and think about what do you define success. I think a lot of us define it by money,
Right.
or by I have a certain title. But like success might be I just got peace. I can go home and actually want to go in my house. It could be something as simple as that. So I would encourage people to think about what is your true definition of success. So the last question: what are the barriers to building a flexible business strategy and communities that emphasize stability and predictability? And how can we cultivate a mindset shift towards agility and innovation? That was a mouthful.
I'm asking for the repeat, and I'm gonna dive in for 1 minute.
What are the barriers to building a flexible business strategy and communities that emphasize stability and predictability? And how can we cultivate a mindset shift towards agility and innovation?
With development, if anybody's developed a business plan, normally you try to scale it out to what? 5 years, right? Because who wants to see that? The bank, you know, and so that it's going to be something that's going to be equitable, something that's going to be that they can trust. We're just having a conversation about this in class, and so I want to dive into it because there's a shift in just even how you're thinking about developing that business plan in terms of prepared with the concept of failure into it, you know. But with that 5-year plan, everything has to be everything okay, and so you have to really start to think about this concept. That was one person's way of doing it.
Yeah.
Right? The concept of how business is being developed is the models. There's different models that you can utilize. There's, you know, there's design thinking, there's ideation, there's different methods to where how do you prototype what you're actually trying to do, and so that and then you test it, then you prototype it, you test it, then you prototype. But I think, but then it's funding, you know. But like I said, I know I joke with the 40,000 and everything like that, but it's just like, what if that was our code in terms of how we invest back in one another? Now, I'm not talking about one of them COVID. Somebody put a flower on your Facebook page. We forgot because somebody probably mad because you sold into that flower and didn't get your money back. Yeah, but there has to be different ways that, you know, again, to where how do we invest in one another, and I don't have a problem with that. So.
I definitely would say what you said, piggybacking, but also when you say shifting your mindset, we have to get into that where we know that failure is not bad. And it's hard to train yourself to think that way, but the more you trial and error, the more you try things, everybody's made differently, so that means everybody's approach is going to be different. Everything that you do is going to be different than everybody else. And I'm speaking to myself because one of the businesses that I have, I make earrings. Everybody named Mama make earrings, but everybody doesn't make them the same way. So by shifting my mindset to know that, one, I am, like we've all said, created for a purpose. I have a gift that I need to share with others. And then also knowing that just because Eric said no to me today, don't mean that Rhonda's not going to say yes to me tomorrow. So just being okay and comfortable with failure and teaching our kids that failure is not the end result. I think that will also start to shift the mindset. And then for generations to come, we will break that old consequence or generational faux pas of, well, when you fail, you just got to crawl under that rock and just stay there. No, you need to keep moving because life is going to continue, and how you choose to continue in that life will shape and build who you are to become and who you are also influencing for the future.
Don't forget about innovation though, because we're leaving out the innovation part, like being in IT. If you want to know what's going on in the world, ask someone that works for IT. Because we drive the change. So when you're teaching the self-awareness, teach the technology behind it. Because AI is a representation of who you're trying to perceive yourself to be. So don't forget to teach the innovation. You know, don't leave the technology out of the wisdom.
So we don't end it with, because he
Oh, I'm just gonna say, you know, we just gotta make it normal to kind of share our experiences. You know, I had a situation to where I was trying to start my business, and I had somebody who was already doing the business. And when I went to them, they were kind of like, "Oh, I don't want to tell you what I did. You gotta find it on your own." And I went through a series of failures, and I was like, "Well, I'm just gonna give up. This ain't for me." And I kind of think that if people would have mentored me a little bit more and shared their experiences, I would have had a little bit more, I got to go get it, instead of trying to do everything on my own.
Did you forget us else out here for everyone? Thank you, panelists. I appreciate your answers. Don't move. So next we're going to do pass the mic. So that's going to give everybody an opportunity to ask their questions. We got 10 minutes.
So real quick, I want to say, when it comes to when we're talking about circumstances, we need to be teaching each other, those who struggle, and our kids that your circumstance, the things that you go through is an experience. It's not an identity.
Right.
It's an experience or an event that has taken place.
Yes.
It is not your identity. And when it comes to barriers for business, now I've been an entrepreneur. I own 3 companies for 10 years. I have not worked for anybody. And I have been, before the aneurysm, I was making almost $90,000 a year. Okay? So from somebody that has scaled up and continues to grow, thank you to Lexi. Now my finances have been up and down because I've had a lot of medical things happen, in my life, and with my kids, some of my kids and my dad. But when it comes to business, and this is why God gave me business bangers. I teach business to people because so many of us, especially in the African American community, we don't take ourselves seriously. First of all, entrepreneurship is not for everybody, so let's start there.
Yeah.
Everybody is not meant to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
It's okay to start a career, all right? Because maybe that's what God has called you to. Because a lot of us see ourselves as small businesses, right? But did God call you to remain small?
Right.
And so when it comes to business, we don't take it seriously. If you notice that every other culture, they invest in themselves. They go to workshops, they get certain credentials, and they get mentors, and things of that sort. I know a lot of things. I've experienced a lot of things. I have a degree in business. I was in management and business development for over 15 years in corporate. And so I've managed and ran multi-million-dollar companies. And so that knowledge that I have, I share with other people. Jernigan just said that people didn't want to tell them. They do that in the nonprofit world. A lot of you all who have nonprofits, I tell clients all the time, you cannot depend on grant money solely. You have to create streams of income. You want to know how to do it? I can teach you.
Yeah.
I can teach you how to create 3 or 4 streams of income off of one service or product.
Yeah. Good.
I do it all. I've done it and continue to do it. But it has to be valuable. And everything that you do, if it's to help somebody else and not just for you to gain money, it's going to grow.
Yes.
Your foundation, I'm going to tell y'all the other thing here now, a barrier also too is we don't have organizational structure, whether it's in our homes, families, communities, and business. There needs to be an organizational structure and an operational structure. He talked about implementing systems in his home. I had to as a single parent. Me and my kids, this one like a well-oiled machine. You have to build you a community. And how we do that to actually implement it is we become the example. The people who want to be, who want to see change, the people who want our communities to thrive and things of that sort, they will follow suit. So you connect yourselves with people. We talked about synergy the last time. Connect yourselves with people where you can create synergy. You create a village when it comes to business, when it comes to your kids, when it comes to, finances, everything. And so I think that's the important thing that we need to focus on. Get with people who have the knowledge and the things that are willing to share, teach, and things of that sort. And we need to be teaching our kids the same thing. Just be the example.
Yep. In all of the questions that were asked, one thought came to mind: the collective. In everything that we do, I'm an entrepreneur and I have a 9-to-5. But one of the things that I have found is that we struggle, like you were talking about. We struggle because nobody wants to share the information. They're afraid that you're going to do better than what they did. How can we create a collective that is representative of the various mindsets that can allow us to be able to come together and learn and then be able to go back and implement what we've learned? How can we create that collective?
Be our own LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
today.
Yep.
So everybody in here has something that nobody knows about. People don't know I've been in federal penitentiary. They don't know that I mentor and I used to go to all the different schools around and talk to them about prison. Talk to them about, it's a lot of stuff that I've gone through. I was on Kansas City Most Wanted. There's a lot of stuff that people need to hear and know. But also business-wise, I got my own construction business. I also do my music. I also have, we got a lot of stuff, but a lot of